What is good, YouTube? It's Joey, and today we're telling you guys the reasons why you shouldn't sleep on the Arizona Cardinals. I can almost guarantee you if the Cardinals stay healthy, they're making the playoffs this year. Now, winning the NFC West, they could, but I'm not really counting on them to win the NFC West, but they don't need to because your Arizona Cardinals can make the playoffs as a wild card team. So, here, I'm going to tell you why you shouldn't be sleeping on the Arizona Cardinals. So, you start on offense with Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray is in his third year now, quarterback out of Oklahoma. Kyler Murray is really underrated in my opinion. Only reason why he kind of took a downfall last year is because he had an injury. Um, he had that shoulder injury and he had that kind of ankle injury in week 17. As you can see, after that Hail Murray against the Bills, after they won against the Seahawks, he threw 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, was sacked 3 times for 269 yards, 42 to 29 in that loss. But that's the one he got injured. So that's why he threw no touchdowns and 1 interception against the Patriots and wasn't really playing well, scoring only 17 points. Against the Rams, he had 3 touchdowns, 1 interception against the best defense in the NFL, even with dealing that injury. And then against the Giants, he had the 1 touchdown, no pick. He was all right in that one. And then the Eagles one, he was kind of getting healthy. He was kind of recovering. Hopkins was doing well, but the Eagles defense was pretty weak. He threw 3 touchdowns, had the pick, but against the 49ers, where he didn't look all that great, he threw no touchdowns and 1 interception, was sacked 3 times. Because he was injured, and then the loss against the Rams, he really didn't play much with that ankle injury. So Kyler Murray, for his career, 2019 won Rookie of the Year. He had 3,722 yards, 20 touchdowns, and 12 interceptions in his rookie year, along with a lot of yards running. Um, Rushing, he had 93 attempts, 544 yards, 5.9 yards a carry, and 4 rushing touchdowns in 2019. But in 2020, he really took off, having 819 yards on the ground and 11 touchdowns. So Kyler Murray, outside of Lamar Jackson, if probably the next best running quarterback. He's just really fast, really athletic, can really expand this Cardinals offense. So when you have a quarterback like Kyler Murray, it makes your team already good. So Kyler Murray has a really strong arm, and he's really mobile with his legs. It's just the one thing slowing him down is injuries, which you can't predict. But if Kyler Murray is healthy, don't sleep on Kyler Murray because he can be an elite quarterback and put up great numbers, and honestly, a good fantasy quarterback to have for your team. So then you go, quarterback is the first thing you look at on a football team, and Kyler Murray is definitely one of the best. One of the best quarterbacks. Well, not one of the best, but he's a good to borderline elite quarterback when he was healthy, and he's only improving as the years come on. So you then again, head coach is the biggest weakness for the Arizona Cardinals. But you have a young head coach in Cliff Kingsbury. If he can kind of adapt and kind of adapt his scheme and make it so he can adapt to the defenses he sees and make sure that he's calling a variety of plays and kind of upgrade his offensive playbook and not be too Kyler Murray dependent, then your Arizona Cardinals can be much better. And that's where they added on to their offensive line and got a little bulkier in the run game. so they don't have to rely on Kyler Murray. Starting off with Rodney Hudson, adding him in free agency. Rodney Hudson has been one of the best centers for a long time now. He is in his 30. He's 31 now, but he's still playing at a high level. He's been really um, one of the sturdiest offensive linemen um, over the past 10 years. So he's really been having a solid career, not really letting up that many sacks. He can control the front line, and he doesn't really allow your quarterback to have that much interior pressure from the center to worry about. And when you have a good center, it takes pressure off the guards and makes their life easier. So Rodney Hudson was a great add and should continue playing at a high level on the season. So this is without injuries. Injuries can happen to any player, any team. So then you have DJ Humphries, who actually played really well at the left tackle, blocking the blind side, a Pro Bowl snub. He was actually playing really well. So you have a good left tackle there. Justin Pugh at the guard is pretty underrated. He was playing a lot better. The Cardinals' offensive line gave up a lot less sacks last year. And then you have Brian Winters, a veteran who can slide in at right guard, or Josh Jones, a talented young player who can slide in there. That's probably the biggest weakness on the Cardinals' offensive line. But then again, at right tackle, you have Kelvin Beachum, who is all right. He can hold his own, but he's not the best. So offensive line is definitely getting better in the interior with Rodney Hudson. They have two good ones in Humphries and Hudson. Pugh is pretty good. The left side is really strong, but the right side is a little more iffy, but they're developmental. They can get better. And Kyler Murray, when healthy, he can run around. Now, in the running back department, you add James Conner and you have Chase Edmonds in there. Chase Edmonds is really underrated. He can run and catch out of the backfield. I like his speed. I like his vision. I like a lot about Chase Edmonds. He can catch out of the backfield. He has great vision. And he proved he could be a bell cow back, but the Cardinals obviously wanted another guy in there, so they get James Conner. So it's not the most stacked running back room there is in football, but it's definitely one of the better ones there is in football. You have James Conner, who is a bigger power back, more of a power guy, who's not really as agile as Chase Edmonds is. But Chase Edmonds' stats, he was the number 2 running back last year. He was behind Kenyon Drake. So in 2020, last year, he had 448 yards, only 1 touchdown, but broke off the 32 long run. But he was the number 2 back, so we'll continue to see if he could improve. But in the receiving game is where he was pretty effective. 402 yards, 4 touchdowns in the receiving department in 2019. So his yards improved rushing from 100 yards improving from 2018 to 2019, 150 yards improving from 2019-2020, and his touchdowns went up. He had the most rushing in 2019, but then took a step down because he was not the leading rusher. But you see the potential in Chase Edmonds. He was pitching in well as a number 2 running back, and he'll probably be that number 2 running back again, most likely, barring a James Conner injury. But James Conner, he's an up and down player, but last year he was running behind a bad offensive line. The thing with James Conner is I like his size. I don't like his speed, but I like his power and I like his mentality. I think he can play better with this offensive line. They're getting better in the interior. With Rodney Hudson, I think he can change a lot up front, and I think he's a key for this Cardinals offense. In 2020 last year, James Conner had 721 yards, and 6 touchdowns. So he was doing really good, 42-yard long run. Behind that offensive line, I think that's pretty good, 4.3 average yards a carry. So the Cardinals have two great 1-2 punch. Benjamin the third is a solid option for a third running back. But the Cardinals tight end room after losing Dan Arnold, they're looking pretty weak there, but they don't really rely much on their tight ends. But receivers, you have DeAndre Hopkins, and you can argue he might be the best wide receiver in the league. To me, it's 1A, 1B with him, Adams, and then you could throw like Tyreek in there, Stephon Diggs, or even Julio still. But there's just so many good ones. And when you have a guy like DeAndre Hopkins, a caliber receiver like him, he might have one of the best hands in the league. You just throw it up to him and he catches it. If the Cardinals can utilize him in the downfield passing game instead of the short game more, then DeAndre Hopkins could be a very lethal wide receiver. In 2020, he had 1,407 yards, 6 touchdowns. So he was really good. And downfield, he had 6 40-yard catches and 17 20-plus yard catches and had a 65.22% completion percentage when he was targeted. So DeAndre Hopkins can really do it all at the receiver point. So him and Kyler Murray should get better in their second year together, and they were really good in the first year. So that's a scary thought or a great thought depending on your fan interest. But then you look at the other receivers. They drafted Rondale Moore, who's a really promising young wide receiver. But the only concern with Rondale Moore is his injury concern. He has been injured quite a bit, but when on the field, he's really fast, and combined with Kyler Murray's arm, the Cardinals' air raid offense can go crazy next year. They have all the weapons in the world. Rondale Moore can just burn a defense, and Kyler Murray can get it to him, and then they can move the chains well. Christian Kirk, he's a pretty underrated receiver. He's probably going to be the third option. Him and AJ Green, AJ Green will rotate in, but Christian Kirk is a nice downfield threat. He's really not the primary guy, but he's kind of the secondary guy. He has room for improvement though. He in 2020 had 621 yards and 6 touchdowns. So that is definitely good numbers for a number 2 wide receiver. In 2019, he had 709 yards and 3 touchdowns. So he's consistent over his career, but definitely had his best year in 2020. So he should continue getting better. And then you have AJ Green, who didn't really put any effort in Cincinnati. But if he's here in a new start, he gets to go up against lesser corners. He has lost speed and stuff, but AJ Green, now knowing he doesn't have to worry about risking his body for a team that's not going to be that good. He knew the Bengals were not good at all, so he wasn't really feeling like risking his body just to play for a team that's going nowhere. But yet last year, he had 523 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's pretty good for a number 4 wide receiver. So AJ Green is definitely has time to recover and improve. So he's not even the first option. So if he doesn't work out, the Cardinals are still fine. So that's their offense. Their biggest question mark on offense is obviously health, like it is for every team. And then it's Cliff Kingsbury. Can he call plays the right way? Get DeAndre Hopkins involved more downfield? Is he going to be too Kyler Murray dependent? That's really the biggest question there. So really not the worst concerns to have. So you go to defense now. And they add J.J. Watt, who a lot of people are thinking J.J. Watt's not really going to have that big of an impact. The biggest concern for me with J.J. Watt is his injury history. The dude can still play at a pretty high level, not 2011 J.J. Watt. But he was getting double teamed a lot last year. He was the highest double teamed player on the Texans and the highest double teamed edge rusher out of all edge rushers last year. When people were facing the Texans, they were like, oh, just double team J.J. Watt because they don't have anyone else. But not only is J.J. Watt going to make a difference on the pass rush game, they won't double team him as much. So that gives them better looks because they have Chandler Jones and they have Marcus Golden and they have other guys there. Not only will J.J. Watt not be double teamed as much, and he can make a difference in the pass rush game. He's also really good stopping the run in the interior. So I bet he's going to play like defensive end. So he's going to have an impact in stopping the run as well. So a nice interior force in J.J. Watt. Not at the nose tackle position, but at the defensive end position. Not the outside linebackers are probably going to be the edge rushers. Like Chandler Jones, when healthy, is one of the game's best pass rushers still. Chandler Jones had 19 sacks the year before last year, and he got injured last year, so we didn't really see much of Chandler Jones last year. But this year, Chandler Jones coming from the edge, he's really fast. He's got really great edge rush moves. And one of the best edge rushers we've seen in recent memory. He had 19 sacks in 2019, only 1 sack in 2020, and he only played like 5 games. So, I mean, that wasn't that great. But with Chandler Jones coming back with a lot of rest, coming off his best years, he had 12.5 in 2015, 11 in 2016, 17 in 2017, 13 in 2018, 19 in 2019. So he's shown consistency when healthy. He's played near 60. He's played 16 games for 4 straight years from 2016 to 2019. He's played all 16 from those. So he's not really that injury prone, set aside from last year. So the Cardinals, they have Marcus Golden, who they're hoping will step up opposite of Chandler Jones. They're hoping he'll step up from Hassan Reddick. And Marcus Golden isn't really an elite pass rusher, but he's a solid to above average pass rusher. I think Marcus Golden is really underrated because he's an outside linebacker and he gets sacks. He gets pressures. He doesn't really get sacks, but he can get pressures. He's not really a world-class disruptor, but Marcus Golden is improving, and he can definitely have a lot better looks with double teaming Chandler Jones, maybe even double teaming Watt if teams want to. But just having J.J. Watt, the name, that's going to have more attention to him, and having Chandler Jones, the name, more attention to them, and creates better opportunities for other players to get after the quarterback. You have Jordan Phillips in the interior, who's pretty underrated. He's not an all-star superstar, but he can definitely hold his own in the inside. He's not really the world-class pass rusher, but he can hold his own inside against the run. He had 2 sacks last year in 9 games, so he dealt with injuries. But in 2019 with Buffalo, he had 9.5 sacks, which is his best year. So if he could get back to that 2019 form and stay healthy, it would definitely do a lot for the Cardinals. But Cardinals' biggest weakness up front is their defensive line, and they were pretty bad against the run. But never fear, because the inside linebackers with Isaiah Simmons and Zaven Collins might just be one of the best duos in football. Those two are going to wreak havoc So if they get to the second level with the linebackers, Isaiah Simmons and Zaven Collins can definitely make plays. Jordan Hicks, the veteran, who is a really solid veteran, they've given him permission to seek a trade. So he's probably not going to be the starter. But Zaven Collins is a really talented young player that is good at reading the run and has great pass coverage skills. And Isaiah Simmons is that hybrid guy who they are going to start a lot more this year. And when Isaiah Simmons is on the field, we know all his potential in the pass coverage game and diagnosing the run. So Isaiah Simmons being a starter this year and Zaven Collins, those two are going to be really good in this defensive scheme. So they have a pretty good front seven. I'd give their grade like a B, an A minus because of that interior defensive line's a little bit iffy, but I like their pass rush and their inside linebackers are pretty good. So now you get to the secondary. You have Malcolm Butler as your cornerback one. Now, Malcolm Butler, here's the thing. He's going to give up his completions, but he can still match up well with the number one receivers. And he actually had one of his best years as a pro last year with a good handful of interceptions. He was able to intercept the ball and bring it back quite well last year. So that was good. He can get his hands in and defend the ball. So here's some of Malcolm Butler's stats. Um, Malcolm Butler can still play at a high level. So he was with the Titans last year. He had 4 interceptions last year and 14 passes defended, which was his third most in his career. So he can still play at a high level. He can still cover guys. He may not be a premier shutdown corner, but he's definitely a quality above average corner. So at the number 2 corner, you're probably going to have rookie Marco Wilson. So Marco Wilson has the good and the bad in him. He was a 5th round pick. So the good is he has a great athletic profile for the position, boasting the speed 4.3540 and explosiveness 43.5 vertical, 136 broad. So he's a very fast, athletic cornerback. And in cornerbacks nowadays, fast and athletic can get you far in football. They can get you far in this league because being fast and athletic means that you can stay with the receivers, you can stay with the top receivers. You won't get burnt deep, which is good. And being able to move with receivers is really good. So that's a lot of potential. He's also pretty fast in terms of changing direction, has a 4.09 shuttle and 6.80 3-cone, so that's good with staying with receivers. He has the upper body strength, 26 reps, to get up with physical receivers at the catch point and can bring it in as a tackler on short screen passes. So those 3 right there are very promising for this young man. Because if you're explosive like that, if you're fast like that, plus you're strong to match with those physical receivers, then that's all the physical talent you need to be a lockdown corner. He has and a good tackler on the short screen passes when they're coming to the outside to you. That's what you love to see. He has experience playing on both boundary and in the slot, so that's good. Added versatility. So all of these are a lot of good positives. He has the athleticism to run with receivers and man, so the Cardinals like him as a scheme fit. He plays well in space, making zone drops, allowing his instincts to take him the ball to disrupt or get the pick. So if you have a corner that has the good zone drops and good man coverage, along with able to get the interceptions, is a home run. He does a good job contesting on jump ball situations with size and leaping ability, which just adds icing on the cake. and he's great when set on the blitz from the outside, having the speed to get there quickly and strength to effectively bring the ball carrier slash QB down. So you love to see that. Only one of 4 true freshman corners to start for the Gators in program history. So he got all the talent in the world. He just needs to adapt to the NFL game. But the bad, his tape hasn't improved much since his first season in Gainesville, which is pretty concerning because you want to see a guy able to improve. But with good coaching, you can have a player improve. So that's a fixable problem. He lost his position and coverage several times in man situation, needing better spatial awareness. Again, that's a coaching issue that can be fixed. He is inconsistent at jamming receivers at the line in press coverage, resulting in playing more off man. So he needs to get better at that. That's just practice and coaching is what needs to improve that. He just needs to practice more press coverage. But if the scheme calls for off man, then he should be fine. He will get lazy in coverage at times, standing up and letting receivers getting past him, stacking him deep. Again, that's a conditioning and coaching issue. He needs to be coached up to not let the receiver get past him and stacking him deep. Eyes can deceive him at times, looking into the backfield rather than staying on his receiver. That is a coaching issue. Most of these are, not all of them. Gives up a ton of separation on in-breaking routes, oftentimes with his feet stuck in the ground rather than having quick transitions and up close. So having your feet is really important with the quarterbacks. Having all that footwork comes in handy, but doesn't have natural back pedal, uses more of a side shuffle. So again, that's a coaching issue. In my practices, they work on the back pedal drills, and that's really basic. So that's kind of interesting. It's pretty easy to backpedal. Doesn't play with the demeanor or effort you need to see as a run defender. Again, corners are more important in pass coverage, but when the runs come to the outside or they're breaking and you need to get the tackle, that's a little bit concerning. Throws more body shots or arm tackles rather than wrapping up runners, so that's something that needs to be worked on. Made headlines with an unsportsmanlike conduct call on the LSU that cost Florida the game. That's a coaching issue that can be fixed. Durability is a concern with 2 ACL tears on his ledger. So that is probably the biggest bad right there. So that's a lot of positives. Great physical corner, has great speed. It was a steal in the 5th round for sure, but his injury concern and his coaching, that's basically a lot of coaching and conditioning issues. So if he has a great offseason, then all that can be fixed quite easily. So a corner 2 is pretty iffy. Robert Alford is pretty injury prone himself. So it's iffy, but Marco Wilson, if he can come into the NFL and start right away, I think it takes one really good offseason, but he'll be facing lesser receivers, still talented ones, but that could be a little concern. But Byron Murphy in the slot is really good. Byron Murphy is able to stay with the corner, with the receivers pretty well. He's really underrated, one of the better slot corners in the game. So when you have a veteran like Malcolm Butler, when you have a corner like Byron Murphy, they can also help Marco Wilson develop. So definitely the secondary, in my opinion, has improved since last year. So in 2020, he had 8 passes defended, no interceptions, but he had 2 sacks. Really just working that inside nice. He had 1 interception in 2019 and 10 passes defended. So I had a little decline there. But Byron Murphy is a good slot corner. So The Cardinals cornerback room isn't really the best, but they're definitely not terrible. I'd say they're above average to average there. But safeties, you have Buda Baker, who's honestly one of the best safeties in football in terms of how versatile he is. He's really good in coverage. He's a really good tackler. He can sack the quarterback. He can also pass rush. He's a good blitzer off the edge. So when you have a guy like that who can tackle and who can rush the quarterback and do all of that, you got yourself a gem. Because in his career, last year, 2020, he had 2 sacks, 6 passes defended, 2 interceptions, including that run back on Seattle. That was his only 2 interceptions in his whole career. So he is improving. He can take the ball away. He can get after the quarterback. And he's a tackling machine. So when you have a guy like that in the secondary, it can really help a lot. And then Jalen Thompson is the other safety, who is pretty solid himself. So the Cardinals are an up-and-coming team with young talent like Kyler Murray, like Buda Baker, like those guys, and then a lot of veterans. Oh, they added a lot of veteran talent. They have an improving offensive line. They have the receiver potential to be a really explosive offense with Hopkins, Rondale Moore, Kirk. They have AJ Green, Isabella, so they have a lot of options at receiver to go with. James Conner and Chase Edmonds could be a pretty solid running back duo, but the defense might just be better than the offense, surprisingly, with J.J. Watt, Chandler Jones, and Marcus Golden are pretty good pass rushers. J.J. Watt, as we talked about, making the difference inside. If Jordan Phillips can get back to his form, and then Isaiah Simmons and Zaven Collins are really good at the linebacker spots. And then Buda Baker in the secondary. Malcolm Butler was coming off one of his best years. So the cornerback room got better. The offensive line got better with Rodney Hudson. They went 8-8 yet last year with some injuries to Kyler Murray. So the Cardinals got better, adding Zaven Collins, Rondale Moore, adding J.J. Watt, adding Rodney Hudson. So adding Malcolm Butler. Marco Wilson has potential. So the Cardinals, don't sleep on them. They're a good team. Super Bowl contenders. I don't know if they're quite there yet, but they have the potential to make a deep playoff run. And if Cliff Kingsbury improves as a head coach, if they can stay healthy, and if guys can improve, then who knows? They could just go very far. But that's it. That's my thoughts on the Arizona Cardinals roster and where they are right now. Don't sleep on the Cardinals. I gave you my unbiased analysis, fair analysis with stats to back it up. So like and subscribe. Road to 400. Thank you all so much for watching. Let me know what else you guys would like to see in the comment section below. Take it easy. Peace.